Hey everybody, John Huber here from the Maryland Education Network. I want to talk to you a little bit about K through 12 public education in the state of Maryland. There's been a lot in the news lately, no question about it. Well, first of all, the first week of virtual learning is in the books, so I want to hear from you, and I'll talk about that a little bit in a bit. But first of all, I've been getting lots of discussion points about why aren't schools opening? Why, when will schools opening, that sort of thing. When will schools open, that sort of thing. So we're going to take a little bit of step back and we're going to see exactly what's going on with schools. First of all, let's understand why schools are not opening. The first question is, who's in charge? As I said before, State Board of Education, Dr. Karen Salmon, period, end of story. Larry Hogan is not in charge. He played a little dirty trick on him last week or a couple weeks ago. He went out and had this press conference and he said schools are fully authorized to open. That threw a lot of people through a loop there because he kind of made it seem like he was making this big announcement that schools are going to be open. And people who don't know any better just said, well, schools are open, what's the problem? It's a little more complicated than that. When Dr. Salmon closed schools back on March 13th was the last day, I remember it well. And since then, nothing has changed. The state put out a originally 38-page document that said, this is what you need to do in order to reopen through like a hybrid type of model and whatnot. That has not changed. It's been updated and some additional languages in there now where it's kind of, they're kind of playing a little bit of language games, like they're saying that they encourage them to open when it's safe to do so. So the question then becomes is, when is it safe to do so? When will these school systems be opening? And I gotta tell you, based on the guidelines that the State Department of Education themselves put out, it's not gonna be anytime soon. Here's why. There are essentially three-step sets of guidelines that each school system has to follow. There's the feds, there's the states, and there's the state health department guidelines. The most important one is the one that comes from the Maryland State Department of Education. They've updated it a little bit, changed the language like I said a couple seconds ago, but basically it's the same as it's always been. They talk about wearing face masks, social distancing, all the normal stuff. The problem comes in with increased risk people and what happens when you get a case. Increased risk, that's the first thing on their list of things. How do you deal with students who are at an increased risk and staff members who are at an increased risk? The first thing that they do is they say that the schools should work with the healthcare providers of these individuals. I don't know if that means that the schools are supposed to be talking to all the doctors and physicians for everybody in the school who considers him or herself at risk. I don't know exactly what that means, but anyway, it says all staff should take the necessary steps to protect themselves. And they suggest that the school systems provide alternative means like telework and reduced and modified work assignments. I know of a lot of people, a lot of teachers are going, and custodian workers and cafeteria workers and everyone else is going to say, oh, I'm at high risk, I'm over 50, I'm over 60, I'm at high risk, I can't come in. Then what are the schools going to do? That's going to be a problem. Students who are at risk schools should work with their healthcare provider. I don't, that's going to be hard to do, to say the least. But that's what they recommend. In order to open schools, they have to meet all the IDEA and Section 504, which deals with special ed and students with disabilities. That in itself is going to be a very, very difficult thing in a hybrid type of model. It says screening, that students should be screened and that students should not enter the building if they have symptoms. I don't know how they're going to do that. They're going to stand at the door with the temperature checks like a lot of places have done. I'm not exactly sure. So that's kind of a difficult thing. And it says that parents should be doing a lot of the screening at home. Parents should not send their kids to school when they have symptoms. And if kids develop symptoms at school, the parents are going to be required to come and pick them up right away. I'm sure that's going to happen, right? And then there's all this stuff about social distancing and limited use of shared areas, like the cafeterias, the gymnasiums, the auditoriums, places like that, which is standard, comes back to face masks, social distancing, and good hygiene and good cleanliness, and deep cleaning and disinfecting, that kind of stuff. So all this is pretty simple. So you got the increased risk students, you got the disabilities, you got the screening issues, you got the social distancing on it. But here's the big one. Then what happens when someone gets the disease? The minute someone contracts the disease, then what happens is these whole other list of protocols kick in, where they have to work with, the school has to work with contact tracers. There's contact tracers now where they start calling, and they want to know, schools have to find out who are the close contacts, as they call them. So if they find out that a kid has COVID-19, then they're going to have to find out who the kid's close contacts are, and those kids are going to have to stay home for 14 days. You can see how that's going to work in a middle school or a high school now. Oh yeah, I sat right next to him in phys ed, or I sat next to him in math. I have to stay home for 14 days. It's going to be very, very difficult. It's just a difficult situation all the way around. The feds talk about different levels of transmission within the community, and what their guidelines are and whatnot. And the first thing I'll say the feds, I'm talking about the CDC, in their very first statement about everything, what they say is expect cases. If you're going to open schools, expect cases, okay? And this whole contact tracing thing is going to be a nightmare. These are educators, these are teachers, these are not healthcare professionals. So that's going to be, it's going to be a problem. So here's what's happening. The state has made some very, very, I don't want to say difficult, but pretty cumbersome requirements on these school systems in order to open. They're allowing them to open, and now they're kind of sitting back going, well, schools are all fully allowed to open, so I don't know why they're not. A lot of tug of war going on here. Ultimately, it is, right now, it's in the hands of each local jurisdiction, and we'll see what happens. My personal opinion, and I've been saying it since March, these kids are not going back to school anytime soon. Towson State tried it, and they did some random testing in order to come back to school. You had to be tested. They came up with 55 positive tests. And even if you did open school, I think that, a lot of parents would not want to send their kid to school until we get to zero with a vaccine. I don't think any schools are going to open anytime soon. Just my opinion. So again, nothing has changed as far as the makeup of whether schools can open or not. It's all the same. There's just a little bit of different political language on both sides. So take that as it may. Now, the last thing I want to say is what I said at the beginning. I want to hear from you. I want to hear from some stories from you all about the first week, or if you see this after the first week. I want to hear some stories about the first week of virtual learning. I want to hear from some kids. A lot of kids out there. I want to hear from the teachers. I want to hear from the parents, and let's see what we can do. Send me a shout. Send me a message. Send me an email. Whatnot. And let me know how it went. Give us suggestions. I would love to interview some people. I'd love to interview some parents, students, former students, my teacher friends, counselors. Give me a shout. I'd love to interview you, and let's talk about this thing, because this is this is crazy. But again, my opinion, I don't think the kids are going back to school all year. I know some of them say they're going all virtual for the first quarter or for the first semester. My opinion, it's going to be all year, and it might even be next year. We will see. Anyway, thanks for watching. Have a great day.